I'm going to get us started. Welcome, everybody, to our Advocacy Equals Telling Your Story workshop. We are so happy that you joined us tonight or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the United States. So we're going to begin with just an overview of the MNEA, the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, and explain, what the status is with it right now, where is it at? And then we're going to launch into some different advocacy opportunities for people to get more involved, and then some key points that you can make with your representatives and senators, whether they're Republican or Democratic. We'll have talking points for both. And then we're going to explore storytelling tips so that you can feel confident telling your story. Because at the end of the day, the theme of this workshop is that advocacy is really just telling your story, and you are the expert at that story. So we're going to workshop that, give you some pointers, give you some time to just kind of work on it on your own for like 10 minutes and then regroup and kind of workshop it all together. So we're going to try and get to as many people live on the call to workshop their elevator pitch, if you will. We may not get to everybody, got a healthy group of people here, but we'll see how far we can get. And just do a quick intro before we begin the whole thing. I'm Lillian Isabella. I have PKU, phenylketonuria, and that is one of the disorders that will benefit from the Medical Nutrition Equity Act being passed. I'm also on the board of directors for the National PKU Alliance, and I am the advocacy chair for the advocacy committee. And then my co-host is Sarah Chamberlain. I'm going to turn it over to her so she can intro herself as well.
Hi, so I am Sarah Chamberlain. I'm the executive director of National PKU News, and I have an 8-year-old with PKU. I like that Lillian called out, that we're both PKU, but really we have a lot of people on this call, hopefully, who are from other disorders, not just inborn errors of metabolism, but also we wanted to open it up to anyone who was advocating on the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, because, we think it's really important. We're all in this together, whether it's PKU or a GI disorder or whatever else, we're all going to benefit from this bill, and we're all benefit from learning how to tell our story and feeling comfortable doing so. So with that, I think we're going to move into this Medical Nutrition Equity Act, and then I'll do a brief background. We are recording this, which I think everyone heard when they logged on, and that's mostly so people who missed it can see it again, or you guys can watch it over and over on Saturday night when you have nothing better to do than work on telling your story, which I don't. But we got a couple more people in the waiting room. I'm going to let them in. If you have questions while we're talking, if you can put them in the chat, that would be great, just so we sort of don't stop the flow. When we get to a point, we will sort of, after we do some facts and figures and talking points, we're going to stop and take some questions before we launch into the storytelling workshop part, because, obviously, I think people being comfortable with the facts will help them be comfortable, advocating for them. So and then we'll save that time for Q&A. But in the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Did I miss anything, Lillian, or should we proceed?
Oh, just one more thing. If you know already that you want to workshop your elevator pitch on this call live, please just put a message into chat to myself and Sarah, and we will get you up first. Maybe that we get no volunteers until later on in the evening, and that is okay too. But if you know you want to do it, just pop us a line.
Great, thanks. So the current status of the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. So we are in the tail end of the second year of the 117th Congress. Each congressional session is 2 years. And so we are, the third bullet point says the time is now, and that is really true. We are hopeful that this bill could pass this term, and we need to do everything we can to make that happen. But again, this is the last months of the term. And so where we stand now, because we've been working for a good 18 months on this bill, is that we have 116 co-sponsors in total. In the Senate, we have 22, and that's 17 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 1 independent. And then in the House, we have 94 co-sponsors. That's 79 Democrats and 15 Republican sponsors, co-sponsors. Now, it's pretty imbalanced right now, as you can see, thus the highlighted item. We need more Republican co-sponsors. And we'll talk about that a little later when Lillian goes over the talking points for Democrats or Republicans, depending on who you're speaking to. But the key for this push is really to get as many additional Republican co-sponsors as we can. And looking at our advocacy strategy, it's 3 prongs. We have the patients and providers for medical nutrition equity, both PKU News, the NPKUA, a lot of other inborn errors of metabolism groups are part of that, MSUD Family Support Group, HCU Network America, Organic Acidemia Association, and a lot of GI disorders. That is 45 organizations who are all vested in passing the bill. And so that's that's a coalition effort to try and bring both patients and their medical providers and those perspectives to our legislators. Crossroads Strategies is a lobbying firm in DC that NPKUA has been working with for a couple years, and that is really a strategy that's executed based on the lobbyist relationships with the offices. And so Lillian and I are working with advocates, and then those lobbyists are going in and saying, okay, so we know you met with 3 advocates from Alaska, senator from Alaska. You've heard their stories. Now we want you to sign on this bill. So it's really, it's a symbiotic approach where we're sort of approaching from as many angles as we can. And then the last and most important is the grassroots. And that's all of us on this call, telling our personal stories and really bringing a human face to this bill. It's just a piece of legislation to people who do not understand the essential quality of medical nutrition. And what all of us can do in the grassroots is change the perspective and really put a face and a human element on this legislation. So the time is now. We're actively working to push the bill forward. If it doesn't pass before December, we'll need to reintroduce in January, but we're not currently focusing on that. There will be a strategy for that if and when it becomes necessary. But we're hopeful that given the current state of things, and we'll go through a few of the reasons, that there's a chance for the bill to pass this year. So next one, opportunities for legislative action. Did that go away? It went away on my screen.
So we can still see it.
Okay, you can still see it. All right, do you want to take these, Lillian?
Yeah, so we've got Rare Across America, which some of you may have registered for, and that's happening in August. So if you registered, you will have received an email with your appointments already. And if you haven't yet, just go ahead and search your inbox for an email from Advocacy Day at advocacyassociates.com. I want to share also that we are going to be sending this slideshow out to you guys, so you don't need to worry about frantically taking notes or anything like that. But yeah, so you could just check your inbox, see if you heard anything from them. There'll be a login process, and then you'll see that your meetings have been set up already. The thing with Rare Across America is that they do it in groups. So if there are other people who signed up to participate for Rare Across America who are in your same district or in your same state, you'll be on a call with all of them, and they'll all have things that they're talking about. So in a situation like that, the elevator pitch that you give will be a slightly shorter one because everybody has a more limited time to speak. That being said, the last one I did of these, there were a lot of people on my senator calls, and there was nobody else on my representative call. So I got like a full half hour with my representative, and they signed up right afterwards as a co-sponsor, which was amazing. So you may also have the opportunity to really just talk and explore your story with them. Another opportunity is to find and call your senator or representative on nutritionequity.org/find-your-representatives. Again, we'll send you the slideshow so you can just click the link. But it's a really amazing site that Sarah was instrumental in creating that makes it so easy. You literally just put in your address and it pops up for you. The information of your senator and your rep and their website, and they'll usually have a form you can fill out, and the phone number will be right there. When you go to the Nutrition Equity site, put in your address, their phone number comes up, and that's usually the best first step for advocacy, is to call them and just say, hey, and the elevator pitch, which we'll get to later. Then you can also email your senator or representative. Again, Nutrition Equity helps make that super easy. They have a form set up that sends the information to your representative or your senator. And you can we highly recommend that if you click that link, you personalize your message just slightly, because people, they can tell when it's a form letter and are kind of going to maybe take it less seriously. So just make it a little more personal and, share why it's important to you. And then also to request in-district meetings with your representatives and senators during the August recess. So you can request the in-district meeting either by calling them up. When you call them up, just say, hey, I would love to have an in-district meeting. What an in-district meeting is literally in August, everybody goes back to where they live. So they leave DC, they go back to their state, and they hang out there. Sometimes they also take a vacation. But if they're not taking a vacation, they are taking local meetings with their constituents. And so it's a really great time for you to not have to travel very far in order to see them, and to just, make your case in person. So requesting in-district meetings is something that you could do this month, actually, very specifically. And we're ready for the next slide. All right, so we're going to dive into Republican talking points. So like Sarah said, really our main push right now is to get more Republicans to sign on as co-sponsors. So it's important to stress this is a bipartisan bill. There is no party line reason why a Republican wouldn't sign on as a co-sponsor to this bill. It is already bipartisan. But as you can see, it skews more Democratic, because anything healthcare related can tend to skew more Democratic. But we have some really solid Republican talking points that we have found Republican senators and representatives respond very positively to. And they're also true. They're real things about this bill. So I'll just review them with you real quick. This legislation allows patients to choose treatment options that are medically appropriate for them based on their specific needs in conjunction with their physician. TRICARES, this is a really big one that's important to bring up with your Republican representative or senator. TRICARES coverage of medical foods has already set the precedent for national coverage. So coverage for medical foods has been made a priority for the military. The military has this coverage, and so should all other Americans. Children get this disease through no fault of their own, and it represents a significant financial burden for families. Medical foods, as most people on this call know, cost as much as 5 times the cost of regular food. And then the financial strain on families has only worsened with inflation, and we just can't afford to wait. So when would you use these talking points? You would use these talking points in an email if you reach out to them, or you would use them if you have a face-to-face meeting with them. Democratic talking points. So you'll see this little kind of like digital post-it note up top that we're not currently seeking more Democratic co-sponsors. That is not to say that we don't want you to meet with Democratic. I'm in New York, so all my representatives and senators are Democratic, and I'm going to be meeting with them for Rare Across America. And so my ask to them is going to be to please speak to your colleagues across the aisle, any Republican senators or representatives that you have a relationship with. If you could reach out to them and ask them to, jump on board and co-sponsor this, that would be amazing. And, that's really the angle that we're kind of taking with Democratic people right now. The reason for that being, this is getting a little into the nitty gritty, but we were talking about it earlier today on our advocacy committee call. The reason for that being, if a bill skews too much in favor of one party, so like if there's a lot more Democrats signed on than Republicans, then it starts to become like, don't touch this, it's a Democratic bill, which just doesn't need to be. So we want to get more Republicans on board. So there's no national mandate. These are the Democratic talking points. No national mandate for coverage for medical foods, which is sometimes the only available effective treatment for PKU and other allied disorders. Passing this bill is an effective step towards continuing the full intent of the Affordable Care Act. This point in particular, Democrats really respond to. There are many state mandates for coverage, but they are disparate. So a family could move from one state to another and not realize that they could lose coverage, and they will. And then self-insured plans are exempt from state mandates. And then state coverage mandates are often cut off at an arbitrary age, but children don't grow out of having PKU. All right, I'll let Sarah take this one.
All right, so we don't often have a lot of media coverage for PKU and other inborn errors of metabolism. The formula crisis has sort of been a blessing in disguise for that, because we have been able to get media coverage. You know, it's often the baby formula crisis also affects people with PKU, and you have to explain it's not baby formula and it's this and it's that, but they're talking about it, and they realize that, you know, what's in these cans is really an essential product for life. And that is what, you know, the entire country has begun to realize as baby formula was out of stock. And it's given us an opening to make, you know, the media, make our legislators really understand what medical nutrition is, because they now understand that, you know, again, something that comes in a can really be a life or death issue, and is really a hunger issue for a huge, you know, swath of the younger community. And now we've demonstrated for the metabolic and other communities. So the message, if you have an opportunity to talk to the media, and the next bullet point, we'll talk about that. And I know we have some people who have some media experience on this call who might be able to also give us some tips, but really the message is that supply is not the same as access. We are currently in a supply crisis, hopefully moving out of one. But even after the supply of metabolic formula resumes, our entire community will be facing a crisis of access, because we do not have affordable medical nutrition across the board. So great, we're happy that there's a supply there, or that there's going to be, but that does not mean that this crisis is over for our community. And, you know, I'm talking tomorrow with some media who called and said, you know, everyone says the formula crisis is over. Is it over for your community? And I said, no. Come out and talk to me, I'll explain why. And that is a sort of a narrative that I think a lot of media are interested in, because, you know, we sort of had FI formula, and this, you know, the administration has done a lot, the metabolic providers have done a lot to get, you know, to resume supply. But I think now we can turn that around and say supply is not the same as access. And local media can do that. I mean, you know, one of the first stories about this was like, someone posted in a local Facebook group about, do people need formula? And do people need baby formula? And I posted and I said, well, my kid doesn't need baby formula, but let me tell you about metabolics. And they did a story about that. It got picked up by a state paper, and it sort of rolled into things. And so, you know, I think just raising awareness, even in your local community, if you get a local story, if you can share that on your social media, you know, it raises awareness, it helps people understand, and you may get them to take action. Denise will probably talk later about, you know, she was talking earlier about the idea that it's not just us taking action, we can ask our family members to take action. It was the example of, what if you only have Democratic legislators? You know, what do you do? Well, maybe you have relatives who have you know, Republican legislators who could co-sponsor the bill. Reach out to them. So media really does some of your work for you. And so if there's an opportunity to do that, you know, take it. We did a sort of, you know, talking to the media about the formula crisis webinar like 2 months ago, and we'll send out the talking points and the slides from that as well in the follow-up to this, if that'll be helpful to people, because it's, again, just a way to guide the conversation, much like some of these talking points that Lillian showed us. And then we're moving on to this, but I think we're going to take some questions first, and I see a couple in the chat.
Yes. So Brittany asked if there's a list of people so that we current co-sponsors by state. So I just put into the chat the link to both the House co-sponsors and the Senate co-sponsors. So you can go and see on the left-hand side of those pages, there's all the states listed out. And if you click on your state, you'll see who from your state in the House and who from your state in the Senate is already signed on as a co-sponsor. If your senator or your representative is already signed on as a co-sponsor and you have a Rare Across America meeting coming up with them soon, that's great, because in the event that this needs to be reintroduced in January, you want to have had a recent meeting with them where you say, thank you so much for being a co-sponsor. It means so much to our community. You know, like, send them the love. They don't only want to just hear when people want something from them. They want to feel appreciated as well. So it's a good opportunity to just say, thank you so much. You rock. Do you know any Republicans who might want to sign on? Yeah. We have a couple other questions as well. Let's see. Meredith asks, how many more individual Democrats and Republicans do we need by December for this all to go through?
So unfortunately, there's no magic number. The bill is under several committees, Energy and Commerce, and a few other committees that have to bring the bill into committee, discuss it, pass it out of committee, meaning approve it, want it to go forward. And so that is, a process. When we talk about particularly the lobbyists doing targeted asks, we're looking at those legislators who have power on those committees. Our follow-up materials will give you a list of those committees who are of particular interest to us, but that's the process right now, is getting the committees to approve it both in the House and Senate, and then possibly move it to a floor vote. This bill will likely not be a solo floor vote. Like, you're not going to see on C-SPAN them saying, today we are voting on the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. It will likely be wrapped into some other set of bills, hopefully essential ones that everyone feels needs to pass. But again, it needs to sort of work its way out of committee and then be thematically appropriate to be wrapped in with another set of bills. So they'd likely be healthcare reform bills before the end of the year.
Great. And then another question from Meredith. Would you recommend mailing our stories as well as emailing? Absolutely. Absolutely. We just had a bunch of, at the National PKU Alliance conference, we just had a bunch of people fill out postcards and we mailed them out. All kinds of contact are great. Cannot have enough variety. Social media as well. Like Sarah said, if you follow that link she posted in the chat, it'll auto-populate all of the tweets that you can send directly to your representatives and senators with their handles in there already and everything.
And those, again, if you have someone who's already sponsoring, it'll be like, thank you for co-sponsoring, like, thank you for your support, which is, again, just great to encourage them, whether it's so they remember us at the end of the year, or if we have to reintroduce the bill, it is easy to say, remember you co-sponsored last time, it's the same bill or a very similar bill. Will you re-up? And that's, just keeping in contact with people who have already co-sponsored is really important for that continuity there.
So does anybody else have any questions about kind of the nitty gritty of the MNEA before we dive into telling your story and some tips around that? Oh, Matt just said, where can we read the bill?
The text of the bill is on nutritionequity.org. It's also on congress.org, those links that Lillian posted. The bills are the same for the House or Senate, so either one of those links work. And that's probably the sort of easiest place to read the text of the bill.
Amazing. Any other questions about the nitty gritty? Just let it sit for a second, see if anyone. Feel free to also just call out a question at this point.
Yeah, Randy had a question. Are you limited to your state's Congress people, or can you cross borders? So when you go to your legislator's website, they say, put in your home address and zip code. And then you do, and you hit submit, and they say, sorry, you're not in my district. I'm currently paying attention, targeting all my attention towards those who have elected me to serve them in this district. And that is a sort of nice way of saying, no, they don't really want to hear from you. How we work, how the system works is that we elect certain representatives to represent us. And while your concerns may be interesting to other representatives, the only incentive to them is really as your elected representative. It doesn't mean, again, your relative couldn't reach out if they're in a different district and say, I know someone or I care about someone with this disorder. I think that's incredibly powerful, and we should encourage it. But in general, on a grassroots level, they want to hear from people in their district or state. All right, Lillian, you want to go into telling your story?
Yes, let's do it. All right. So when you advocate, you are sharing the knowledge of something that you live with every single day. It's super easy to be passionate about it because it's like breathing. It is literally your life. You know what it feels like, you know what the experience of it is, you know what the pain of it is, you know what the unique challenges of it are. And senators and representatives really need us to show up and tell our story. And that's what advocacy is all about. So you're actually helping them understand why it's so important. I'll never forget my first phone call with my senator's office, which was five or 6 years ago now that I had that call, and they just signed on as a co-sponsor last year for the first time. Senator Gillibrand, that's a Democrat in New York. So sometimes it can take time from that initial point of contact to get them to sign on. But I will never forget that first call that I had with her senior health legislative aide. She had no idea what PKU was. And I happen to be the kind of person who loves to talk about PKU, which is one of the metabolic conditions, again, that benefits from the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. I love to talk about it. And so it was a chance for me to share with her, oh, this is what PKU is, and this is how it affects me, and this is why it's so important. And she was like, wow, that's so interesting. Thank you. I learned something today. I had no idea what that was. And she made me feel so good about myself. And I was really nervous going into that call. I was so nervous, and it was just an extremely friendly exchange. And it was the beginning of a relationship, which is also something that is a very unique thing about advocacy, is you're developing a relationship with each point of contact that you make. And then these tips on the right, or you can kind of think of them as like a blueprint for your storytelling, but then you can make it your own and kind of play with it. But I'll just go through these one by one, and then I think we'll just give you like 10 minutes to go away and kind of write something up, write up a little short elevator pitch, maybe 6 minutes rather than 10 minutes, looking at the time, but just a chance for you to explore and see what comes out. So start out with what your name is and where you live. So the reason where you live is important is because people love to hear from their constituents. So like, and also sharing your specific neighborhood can be a fun way to connect with people and be like, oh, really? I'll say, I live in Manhattan currently, but I'll also throw in that I grew up in the Bronx, because somebody who's working in an office for a New York person, like maybe has also lived in the Bronx, even though they're with a representative who's repping another place. So just any way you can personalize it and help them feel like, oh, they can place you, geographically and know that you're their constituent. Second thing, what is your ask? So I want Senator Gillibrand to co-sponsor the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. And then this is the Senate number and the House number for the bills. The next thing is, why does this matter to you? So at this point, I tend to describe PKU. I'm like, this is a metabolic condition. And if I didn't have my access to low protein foods in my formula, I would have been intellectually disabled and I would have not have been able to be a fully functioning member of society. Contrast that with graduating with honors from New York University. I work at a marketing agency. I just draw a very stark contrast, and I try and do a bite-sized piece of what PKU means, what I can't eat, why it's so important to have the formula. So it's just a chance to describe your disease disorder and why this treatment changes your life, why it has changed your life, and just, make it personal and the word that's coming to mind for me is spicy. If you have like a detail that's particularly entertaining or interesting, to throw it in there, because that's the other thing, like these people, they hear so many people's stories, and a lot of people are angry when they're talking, or like frustrated, and that makes sense. It makes sense why someone would feel that way. But in my experience, if you are kind of just like relating to them as like, this just really sucks, or it's hard, but also there's this great thing that the diet allowed me to accomplish, it helps them be like, oh, like helps them see you, in my experience, as like someone they can relate to, which can help them feel more closer to the bill, if that makes sense. And then what does the legislation accomplish? So we're going to send you some, documents that we've written up that have bullet points for why this is so important, but this is just an example here. While medical foods have been used to treat PKU for more than 50 years, many insurance companies will not cover them, and the Medical Nutrition Equity Act will solve that. And then thank them for listening. Ask how can you best follow up with them? Usually, if it's like a big group of people, somebody else will probably make that ask, how can we follow up? Like during Rare Across America, for example, somebody will probably say, how can we follow up? If nobody asks and it's towards the end of the meeting, I would say dive in and ask, especially if you're meeting with them one-on-one, be sure to ask. But after they meet with you, they are usually very willing to give you their email and say, yeah, you can follow up in this way. And then set a personal reminder for yourself to follow up in 2 weeks. Follow-up is like one of the most important things in advocacy, because it, helps people remember that they spoke with you. They're meeting with so many different people. They have a million different bills that are passing through their desks. And if they hear from you again, it's that saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So it's just kind of like being, hey, loved our meeting 2 weeks ago, just wanted to follow up, see if you need any supporting documentation, just like a super friendly follow-up in about 2 weeks. Yeah, so that pretty much covers it. Sarah, would you add anything to all of that?
No, I think those are good. I love the point about, just sort of localizing it. Like, I'll say, oh, and I'm over by Holstein's ice cream. Oh, I was at Holstein's last week. When you're talking to your rep, they're like, I was at Holstein's last week. Did you have the Rocky Road? Oh no, I had the orange sherbet. Like, and you just sort of riff on, whatever the local thing is. And I think, looking at what does the legislation accomplish? I got a direct message with a question. I'm not going to name them, but the question was, if you're not on medical foods currently, like, why would you be advocating it, or how do you explain how important it is? And I think saying, it would have been important to me when I was younger. And there are people who don't have, access to other treatments right now who rely on medical foods. And so it doesn't have to be, I need this today. But you can sort of, imagine what it would have been like for me 10, 15 years ago if I had access to this. And there are people going through that right now. And that sort of broadens the appeal of it at all as well. You're saying this is my personal story, but we're all a community with this range of experiences. So I think that's one way, even if you're not, currently experiencing, a shortage, or you live in a state that has great coverage. I mean, people will say, oh, you're from Massachusetts, don't you have everything taken care of? Well, maybe I do, or maybe I have a self-insured plan that isn't covered by state mandates. But let's talk about the other people in this community. The young mothers who can't afford their diet and are at risk of maternal PKU. I mean, you all understand sort of the full breadth of what's going on in the community, and you can speak to your own experience, and then also others if it sort of helps broaden the conversation. But I think you covered everything really well, Lillian.
Amazing. And I think the only other thing I would add to what you just said is that, there are additional forms of treatment out there for PKU specifically, but it doesn't work for everybody. So like the low protein diet is the one thing we know, for the most part is the treatment of repute. But that was great. So now I think we're going to just let's take 6 minutes. I'm going to play some music.
I was about to say we don't have the Jeopardy theme song to play, but Lillian is prepared.
Yes. So I'm going to just share my sounds, share some music, and we'll give you like 6. Oh, I'm screen sharing as well. Hold on a second. Sorry. But just to actually, I think I will also screen share because
May I ask a question, please?
you
Sure.
must.
Are you answering me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm kind of new at this.
Yes.
I'm a terrible typist, so I can talk faster. I don't have PKU. My granddaughter does. I do a lot of cooking for her as far as cooking her special diet food and stuff. So is my story something that these people would be interested in or not?
Yes. There are so many different angles of this. I mean, Lillian can talk about her own experience. I can talk about it from a direct, parent caregiver perspective, but your perspective, is just as valid and just as important. And I think, I know you do a lot of cooking and you do a lot of searching for ingredients and wondering if it works correctly, and the ability to have the coverage and the freedom to buy medical foods, I think is incredibly important, even from your perspective. It's not something that, it would make your life easier, I think you can argue, and the health of and improve the health of your granddaughter. So I think
Thank you.
Your perspective is definitely important.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to play some deep focus music. And I'm going to open up this slideshow here so you guys can see. And just use this as like an outline and kind of go ahead and write, what your elevator pitch might be. All right, here we go. Okay. So I think the next step is, hope that was helpful. The next step is we want to get somebody to do a trial run and share with us what you wrote. And then we will take it from there and see if we can, help you workshop it, or if anybody had any questions come up that they want to talk about while they were working on it. And this is sort of like an open forum, kind of jump in type of thing.
Can I just offer a little advice? So been doing this for a long time. My daughter is 21 almost in a couple of weeks, and I've been doing this since 2009. And I don't say the same thing every time, and I don't even have all the answers, even after that long. So don't be expected to have all the answers. I think speaking from the heart is what you can do. You're the expert. Being spicy, I love that, Lillian. Love that, because you want to connect with the people that are there. A lot of the people that you're going to be speaking with may not be from the district. They may live in DC and work for the congressman or woman or senator. They're usually young people, like right out of college, very intelligent. They're there to listen to you. They're very engaging. They're very kind. Don't be afraid of them. Just tell your story and try to connect with them. They may not be parents themselves or have something going on health-wise themselves, but they're very intelligent people. They can certainly connect with you. Bring props with you. Tell your story. You're the expert. And, one of the things that I've been talking about since the get-go, since my daughter was 5 months old, she's now 21, is maternal PKU. It's something that is really important to me. And if you have a daughter, or if you're a young woman with PKU yourself, or another allied disorder, talk about that, and, talk about your concerns about that, and not, having access to proper formula and medical foods. before your pregnancy and during your pregnancy. And certainly the grandfather that spoke up, good for you. My parents were very involved with my children, and excellent to represent that aspect of PKU as a caregiver. And I give you a lot of credit, and I'm happy you're here. So, just speak from the heart. You're the expert. You don't have to have all the answers. Try to keep it brief, but speak from your heart. That's just my advice that I offer.
I love that advice. And also, I held up a banana. I don't know if everyone saw it, but this is a prop I like to bring on these calls sometimes, because for some people, they can only have the equivalent of one banana as far as the grams of protein they can eat in a day. And it just really helps them understand how that's not enough food.
Does anyone feel like they want to try their elevator pitch?
I can if you want.
All right, Meredith. Yeah.
I didn't finish writing at all, just the beginning, but let me pull it up 1 second. It's kind of brief. I only got up to like what PKU is, but I'm going to like try to finish it and then send it out. Obviously not tonight, but I put, hello, I'm Meredith Baker. I am 21 years old and I live in Wesley Chapel, Florida, but I am currently attending college at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I am writing to whatever the person's name is, I gotta look that up, to co-sponsor the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. Senate, or what you guys have in the bullet point, I just put that. This is very important to many individuals like myself with metabolic disorders. I have a metabolic disorder called phenylketonuria, also known as PKU. And that's all I got so far, just the beginning.
That's great. I mean, I think you said it's brief, but I think, I think that was one of the good points. Like, do keep it brief. And then I think, now you have a start and you can build on that and say, the sort of answer to the question, what would the Medical Nutrition Equity Act mean to you? And if there are experiences you've had where, moving to a different state and you didn't have coverage, or you had to, deal with that state's laws, the idea of having a federal law that would just cover you, might have made that easier, for example.
Perfect.
I don't know if you want to go this route. This is a route that I go. So you can throw it into your your Rolodex of options. But if you hadn't had access to care, you hadn't had access to low protein foods and formula, you wouldn't have been able to go to college. More than likely, you'd be needing to have someone else help you do basic human functioning things. And I bring that up because you mentioned that you're going to university. So, it could be a way to kind of be like, and thanks to the low protein diet, I'm going to, college.
I'll definitely add that.
Can I pipe in real fast? I was just going to say, to follow up on that, the one thing I always try to tell people is, like, if I'm having a conversation with them face to face, I just say, let's just be blunt, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. This is where I would be instead. I wouldn't be able to communicate with you.
So true. My daughter's 21 and she did her recently advocated, and she just did it from the heart. And she said two things. I'm about to graduate college, she said, and I want two things in life. I want a really good job. I worked really hard in college and I studied hard, and I want to become a mom someday. And now my choices are limited because I have to, find an insurance plan that's going to cover my PKU. I may not be able to stay, in this state, or if I want to go to another state, I have to be really cautious about that. So my options are really limited now, and I worked really hard. And the second is, I want to be a mom someday. And, she assures me no time soon. But, she wants to make sure that, she's going to be ready for that. And she's going to be fully covered so that, becoming a mom is hard enough. Not, worrying about what you're putting into your body to have a healthy child is, it's a game changer. So again, you're the expert, and good for you being 21 doing this. I give you a lot of credit. I think that's excellent. Beautiful.
Anyone else want to go and be brave?
Yeah, I can go real quick. I did get through the whole thing, and I think mine is, I don't have anything really spicy, but I'll have to work on that one. But yeah, so I'll just start. Hi, my name is Leo Brisson, and I live in York, Pennsylvania. I would greatly appreciate the support of Senator Casey on the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, or MNEA, which is S 2013. And just a note to people I'm talking to right now, I think that he is the actual sponsor of this. So I don't know if this would help, but I could write something that would be thanking him, or the rep. I think that the Republican representative is on the House. He's a co-sponsor, if my really quick searching is correct. Is that right?
Where do you live? Who is your rep?
Pennsylvania. And I mean, just looking at the page for HR 3783, it looks like Fitzpatrick is a co-sponsor, I think.
Yes, he is. So in that case, I think saying a thank you, but also explaining, because they may have signed on. I mean, hopefully they've signed on because they really understand the issue and, think it's really a worthy cause, but that doesn't mean that they have ever met a person with PKU and ever had that person explain the disorder to them, or what the life is like on medical nutrition. So I think you're still doing a service by saying, I appreciate your support, and then continuing your story.
Okay, well,
we want to get the other senator on too. I think they're not on yet, right, Sarah? Am I right on that?
oh, because there's two, right?
Yeah. I think we want to get the other Pennsylvania senator on, and they're not.
Okay.
On. Yeah.
Well, then we'll just pretend it's addressed to that senator. All right. So so this matters to me because I have phenylketonuria, which is a genetic metabolic disorder, which, if untreated, can lead to severe neurological problems. I would probably say if untreated from birth, just to draw kids in there. I think that would help. This disorder affects people from birth and is treated with a special diet requiring metabolic supplements. These supplements are critical, especially for children, to obtain required nutrients for proper neurological development. Medical foods have been used to treat PKU for 50 years, but currently there is no general mandate for insurance companies to cover these treatments. While some states provide some coverage for some of these foods and supplements, there is no current federal requirement for insurance companies to provide coverage, with the notable exception of TRICARE, which provides coverage for our military. As a result, many underprivileged and underserved communities are at risk for not receiving proper nutritional treatment they require for proper neurological development. The MNEA will help provide access to these resources by compelling insurance companies to recognize such treatment as a medical necessity. I greatly appreciate your time and careful attention to this matter, which is so important to me and the members of my community. I would love to answer any questions you have in person, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really know how to close it. And also, just a note, I would probably lean heavily on the military connection if I'm trying to get Republican politicians to kind of sign on. That's just a personal feeling, I guess. So just some notes.
Yeah, that was great. And you did it very smoothly, like integrated the TRICARE piece very smoothly. I like that.
Yeah, all right, great.
And
you
I put
came
in
up
the
with
chat.
all that in 6 minutes?
I did. I kind of write stuff for I'm a history major and I like explaining things, so I'm pretty good at that.
You want to do mine?
I was going to say, you're going to run the next session. We're just going to workshop everyone through you, Leo.
Okay.
The only piece of feedback I would get, so I went to NYU for acting. So this is an acting note. I know you're not acting, but I think the only piece of feedback I would give would be to feel each word as you're saying it, like focus on each word as you say it. And I just heard a little bit of driving towards the end. And if people are listening to that and they hear that, they might tune out just a little bit. So I would say just like connect to the word as you're saying it a little more. That's a directing note, take it or leave it, but it's my little.
I would definitely do that after I have practiced this more. And actually, actually reading to my kids actually helps me do that a lot. So.
That's awesome.
Oh, if you read to kids, you're fine.
Yeah, I know. Just make everything, over the top, and I can do that. It's just I'm reading off of a little notepad typing here, so that's my good first shot.
That was great. It was great.
Thanks.
I think we have time for like one more person. If somebody else would like to throw their speech into the ring.
getting a lot of smiles, but
That means people are considering it. They're just like, is it worth it? If we wait 2 minutes, maybe no one will go. No, we're gonna have one more person go. I want to add that this can also be someone who's super confident about what they want to say. So it doesn't have to be somebody who wants feedback, but if there's somebody here who's very practiced, and I know there were several people who registered who were like, they've been doing advocacy for a bit. If you wanted to do it as well, that would be cool too.
I would, but I cry every single time I speak, and I'm really emotional right now looking at everybody on this call, and especially people that have PKU. I'm just so proud of you all, and I just think it's wonderful that you're advocating for yourself. And I love hearing how articulate you are and confident you are, and you're willing to help not only yourself but other people that aren't really able to speak up for themselves. And think about that a little bit too, because there's half the people out there we've lost to care, which is devastating. So you're here for yourself, obviously, and your family, but I'm just so proud of you guys. I just want to say that, and I'm emotional, so, but great job. And Lily and Sarah, great job.
thanks.
I'll go ahead and go.
Awesome.
If I can find, I got to see it to be able to read it. So hold on a second. I got to zoom in. All right, here's what I got so far. Hi, my name is Kevin Alexander, and I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm put Senator Kennedy in, and I have a meeting with Senator Kennedy next week. I am asking Senator Kennedy to co-sponsor Senate Bill S2 2013, the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. I was born with PKU, one of the many conditions detected through newborn screening. If I hadn't been diagnosed at birth, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I would be institutionalized with lifelong intellectual impairment. The treatment for PKU is lifelong adherence to a medical diet. This isn't a choice. I have to eat this restricted low protein diet every day for the rest of my life and consume a metabolic formula to maintain healthy brain function. This has been the standard of PKU treatment for over 50 years, but often insurance companies will not provide coverage for medical drinks and low protein foods. And these are extremely expensive. If I were to pay for these formulas out of pocket, it would be like having an extra mortgage just to survive. The MNEA would solve this by requiring insurance companies to cover this medically necessary food and formula. Thank you for your time. And by the way, just one point on the whole thank you. You can't say thank you enough to these people. I had a random chance encounter with the former senator from Louisiana, Mary Landrieu, years and years ago. And it happened because I had sent her an email and had said, that I actually got a response back from them. And even though it was an automated response, when I saw them, I was at an event somewhere and saw them, and I went up to their people and said, I just wanted to say thank you. And they're like, oh, we don't get this very much. And I ended up having an impromptu conversation with the senator who just couldn't get enough of it and was like, oh my gosh, you have to drink this medical formula every day for the rest of your life? I'm like, yes, yes. So my point is saying thank you really does go a long way, because all they ever hear is complaints, ever.
I love that. I also love that the mortgage fact, because that's another one of those things that people are going to be like, wait, did he say mortgage, like another mortgage? And that is something, I mean, even senators have mortgages. They understand. They may have bigger mortgages than us. And so the idea of of yet another mortgage, really sticks in their head. And that's just something you can say. And it's, it's true. We hear that a lot, just that people compare it to the cost of a mortgage, because it really is, that ongoing monthly cost. And frankly, sometimes people are choosing between paying for things like a mortgage and paying for medical care. To Denise's point, we lose people to care because they have to make those hard choices.
And just one plug for the formula shortage crisis. We advocated recently with Ann from Boston Children's Hospital. She's a nutritionist, and she said it so perfectly. She said, there's been a formula shortage crisis, and it's fresh in their minds, so they all know what it was. And she said, we've been in crisis for X number of years. You know what I mean? Several years we've been in crisis. Like, we have not had access to low protein food and formula. And it really, it resonated with them when we said that, because they could really see that this was not this little crisis that happened. I mean, I don't mean to downplay it. It was a big crisis, but has been going on in our community for a very, very long time. This lack of access. So
that is very, very true. I'm not sure if we shared our last slide with everybody. But so check out the last slide when we send it to you. But basically, if any of you are registered for Rare Across America / if any of you have any contact with your senators or representatives, if you email them or call them, please give Sarah and myself a heads up, because then if you remember that 3-pronged approach that we shared with you earlier, we will make sure to let our lobbying firm know so that they can do double duty and reach out as well. Say, hey, you just heard from your constituent. Why haven't you signed up yet? Yeah, so Sarah just messaged it in our chat here, sarah@pkunews.org or lillian@lillianisabella.com.
Lillian, can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So I've got 3 set up next week already with the Rare Across America, and 2 are on Zoom and 1 is in person. So is somebody in charge of kind of setting the tone and say we've brought people in or introduce what we're doing? How does all that work?
Yes. They'll coordinate.
Yeah, you should have a team leader. They did send out an email to team leaders today saying, hey, if you haven't emailed your people, please do, at which point I did. So I was one of those team leaders who hadn't done that. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is one question. So yes, someone will hopefully possibly coordinate a Zoom meeting ahead, or say, if it's the in-person meeting, everyone meet at Dunkin' Donuts a half hour before the actual meeting, and we'll introduce each other and say who's going to talk, because that's usually how we've done it. Part of the reason we organized this session rather hastily, a week and a half ago, was because this year for Rare Across America, the Medical Nutrition Equity Act is not an official ask. They sort of pick certain bills that they're going to ask everyone to talk about. And Medical Nutrition Equity Act is not one of the official asks this year as it was last year. But on the email that you get and the website that you log into does have a 1-pager about the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. They included that for us. So that is there. It will go automatically to the people you have meetings with. And then, as you know, when you participate in it, if you have another bill you want to talk about, that's fine with them as long as it's a rare disease bill. But it might be that if you log in and it shows your team coordinator and you haven't heard from them, you can, shoot off an email that says, hey, I'm Matt. I want to talk about the Medical Nutrition Equity Act in our meeting. And that just sort of prepares them and lets them know.
Okay, thanks.
they may ask questions too of you, and you may not have the answer, which is perfectly fine. What I would do is I would jot down the question and let them know you'd get back to them, and then reach out to Sarah and Lillian with the question, and they can help, answer the question and provide information to you. That happens sometimes. It happens to me all the time, and I've been doing this for a long time. I don't have all the answers, so.
Yeah, and if they ask you on the meeting, if you have any supplemental documents or anything like that, the answer is yes, and you can send it to them, because we have things we can send you. One sheet, it's actually a 2-sheet, but it's got all the important information on it. So, yeah. And I believe we'll be sending that out to you in the follow-up email. All right, well, I think that this concludes our advocacy workshop. If you have any other questions, definitely send us an email. Or if you want to hang on now, I can hang on for another like 5 minutes if anybody has any burning questions they want to ask today. But if not, feel free to go have a great evening.
So Lillian, I sent you what I sent in and you corrected it. Yes, I did. That was, from what I'm getting, way too long for an elevator type thing.
Yeah.
So
that's more of like for an email, but you can pick like some of the highlights for a shorter one.
Okay. I also, like Matt, have 2 things set up next week. So I'm totally lost. I just saw it right before we came on. So would I do more of this version with them? Just the short little.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're in a big, so usually in my experience, the senator meeting is a group of like 15 people, but I'm also in New York. So I think there's more people in New York who get activated. But in the senator meeting, you want the shorter one. If you're alone with your representative and it's just a one-on-one, you could do that slightly longer one and you would have time for that. So I think just feel it out when you're in the room and just see, what feels right.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you think the email or letter should be like 1 page long? Like, we don't want it too long.
I would say shorter is always better. Some people don't read more than like 5 or 6 lines in an email. So my go-to is to keep it super condensed as much as I can, but there is a lot of information that you're trying to get in there. But yeah, shorter is always better while getting the important information in there.
Thank you, Lillian and Sarah.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Have
Thanks,
a good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see everyone.
Yes, good to see everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, Sue.
Hey, Kendall. Good night. See ya.
Bye.